Hello, welcome to the Wildlife Moto channel and welcome to this. What is this, I hear you ask? Well, this might be the maddest motorcycle I think I've ever owned. It's an Indian FTR R Carbon, and it is the personification of madness on two wheels. It is absolutely bonkers in every way, shape and form. Words are going to really escape me, I think, in terms of describing this bike to you in this video. So I think the best thing we can do is press the button, jump on it, and let's take it for a ride. Okay, here we go. And suddenly the peace and tranquility of the Essex countryside is shattered. You've got to love it when the mavericks inside an organisation get their own way, and that so clearly happened with the FTR. Can you imagine the look on people's faces at Polaris when they were like, yeah, you know all those kind of cruiser things we make? What if we did this? Can you imagine how many people said no, but yet somehow it prevailed? Now, of course, if you know the backstory, you'll know that actually Indian do have a legitimate place in the flat track race scene. They've got a 750 animal of a bike that this is kind of, I don't even want to say that it's based on it because it kind of looks like it, but they've got a story at least, which is a story they have very much leveraged in the marketing of the FTR. But this is a street bike, really. This is what this is. The acceleration! Ah! It's just ridiculous. Now, on the spec sheet, it's kind of outclassed by its competitors, really. It doesn't have the most horsepower. You know, it's not the lightest. It's certainly not the cheapest. So it's a bit of a hard sell if you just look at the numbers. But I tell you what, this is just insane on the actual streets in the real world. And that is all down to the way that Indian have clearly obsessed about usability on the street with this bike. They have created a machine that you just want to ride hard all the time. It's addictive, it is adrenaline inducing, it's all those things that you want this type of motorbike to be. And I want to get off this motorway because this bike is not really about these types of roads, although it has cruise control, and I have actually even done a little bit of touring on this bike. I got Sam on the back, got the official Indian rack, loaded up our luggage and took it for like 4 days around the Cotswolds. Don't get me wrong, this is not an ideal two-up bike, and the only reason it worked for us is because Sam is she's about 5'3", super tiny, so she can get on the back pretty easily, and it's very well mannered, as you can see on the highway. You know, I could stick it in cruise control like that, and I could happily sit here all day long. Being a naked bike, you would expect a considerable amount of wind blast at these types of speeds, and well, you wouldn't be wrong in that assumption. You certainly do get it. It's kind of not as bad as you might expect. Dab of the brakes, takes cruise control off. Yeah, it's just got a nice kind of smooth flow of air, but it's definitely going to be a little fatiguing after a while. No quick shifter on this bike either, by the way, if that's the thing that's important to you. It could kind of do with one, because the gearbox is it's probably its weakest point, I think. It's a little agricultural, potentially. I'm having a bit of trouble with my old B-line. Every time I give it the beans, it changes screen. I will do a bit of a review on this, at some points. I love it, don't get me wrong, I love it, but it's got some issues, and I think most of the reviews on this thing so far have been kind of a little bit too influencery for my liking, so I'll do a bit of a real world review. But I've had to get that because my version of the FTR, which is the 2022, this is a 2023 plate but a 2022 model, doesn't have the round dash which has the sat-nav thing built into it. Now, I made a decision to get a 2022 model based on my preference for this colour, because they've stopped doing it. If you look at this bike, it's got the kind of maroon frame, it's got the cursive Indian font up on the carbon clad airbox, and that's the look I wanted, because that's the one that looks most like the race bike, you know, the 750, the flat track. It's got that aesthetic to it. The 2023, if you want this design of airbox, it's kind of like a titanium grey. Don't get me wrong, it's really nice. It's really nice, but I wanted to go for this one, so I sacrificed having the new, I think they'll call it a ride command or something like that, so that I could get the colour I wanted. It only had about 1,000 miles on the clock when I got this bike, and it wasn't much less money than buying a straight up brand new one, because Indian are doing like £2,000 off them or something like that at the moment. But of course this one also comes with the Acra pipes, which they've stopped doing on the new FTR, and the new kind of airbox design with the big FTR logo on it. That's yeah, it gives it a bit more of a kind of sporty look, but this is the one I really wanted, so there you go. Yeah, and you might have noticed that I keep referring to this this thing that you'd normally call the tank as an airbox, and it's one of the unusual things about the FTR, because all this up here is airbox, which leads me seamlessly into one of the biggest frustrations with this bike, and that is its fuel tank, which I'm actually sitting on. The idea is you keep the fuel as low as possible to keep the centre of gravity and the mass as low as possible, to stop the bike feeling top heavy. The problem is, to get the fuel into the back of the bike, it has to kind of go from the nozzle, which is right between my legs, through a kind of U-bend and into the tank, which makes refueling this thing an absolute flipping nightmare. It just gets all kind of clogged up, and it has to kind of burp itself repeatedly in order to kind of spit the air out. So it takes forever to get petrol into it, and you will be doing that a lot, because it has a 13-litre tank. Not ideal. Excuse me 1 second. Because when you get onto a road like this, any talk of small petrol tanks and inconveniences at the filling station are immediately forgiven. Because, as I said, trying to get the words out while grinning from ear to ear is not easy on this bike. I'm going to make a lot of inappropriate noises as I try to describe the absolute insanity of this machine, the absolute sheer bonkersness of it. Oh God! The usability of the power. For the average rider, right? The average rider, like me, you know, I ain't no Valentino Rossi. I don't need 200 horsepower. bike kind of makes you feel like you're a superstar, because it just seems to always be in that sweet spot. When you're on a road like that, you don't have to be going bonkers fast for it to feel like everything's working. The bike feels happy. It's not like a sports bike where it's like you're doing stupid speeds and the bike's like, what is this? We're just getting warmed up. Are you going to put your feet down in a minute? You know what? Where? You know, come on. Whereas this is, it's in its happy place. On those fast, twisty B roads, it just wants to be there. And that, combined with the genius of this chassis, is a magic thing. And we'll talk about the chassis a little bit as best I can. I have the utmost respect for people that design motorcycle frames, because you think about the skill sets involved in it, right? You've got there's physics, there's mathematics, there's material science, metallurgy, there's just so many things that you've got to master in order to create a decent frame. But you've also got to understand feel. Like, there's a kind of an art to it. You've got to understand what a rider really needs. It's no good just making something that's super rigid. It's that magic combination of art and science. And that is apparent in this frame. It's on the stiffer side of things. It's very, very taut, thanks to that steel trellis setup, but that gives it kind of its scalpel-esque feel. It's very, very precise. So yeah, you literally point it where you want it to go and it just kind of goes. Now, when this bike first came out, it had a very strange wheel setup. Well, I say strange, I mean strange for a street bike. Not so strange if you're making a flat track racing bike, I guess, which is, I suppose, what this bike is kind of, well, was, I think, kind of supposed to do. So yeah, when it first came out, it had 19-inch on the front, and I think it was an 18 on the back. Unusual. But Indian have seen sense, and it now has the 17s, making it a proper street bike, which I think it was always ever going to be. It's just a magic combination. You know, we've got the Olins up here, which is what you get on the Carbon, and this, honestly, this combination, the frame, the suspension, the wheels, the engine, it is a thing of absolute beauty. So much fun. And I've had, you know, sports bikes and things like that, which on paper are a lot of fun, but you get the feeling they kind of want to murder you. Whereas this is such a user-friendly feel to it. It really does. It feels kind of like it's a friend rather than a psychopath. It's just in its happy place alongside my kind of skill set. Me as an average rider, I just really get on with this bike. I would highly encourage you, if you're in the market for a kind of naked machine, maybe you're thinking MT9, maybe you're thinking Monster, maybe you're thinking, I don't know, CB1000s, you know, whatever you're thinking along those lines, this one should be a consideration. Because despite the fact it's kind of confused people with its Americanness and its FTR label, you can really just think of this as a naked bike. But it's a really, 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 really good one. So yeah, try one out. I think that's the... Thank you, sir. the best thing to recommend. Now let's talk about some of the nuances of the bike. So I've talked about some of the frustrations. The range isn't great, filling it with fuel is a bit of a pain. The actual fueling itself at low speeds can be a little choppy. A lot of people throw different maps on these bikes. You've got 3 to choose out of the box. You've got standard and sport, and then there's a rain mode as well. I've tried them all and they do make a big difference, but just leave it in sport basically. That's where you're going to have the fun, unless of course it is raining, in which case rain mode does make a tremendous difference. It properly softens it all, so I suppose that's good. But as I said, like, a lot of people throw on different tunes just to get around some of that weirdness with fueling. Now, I've found that this bike massively prefers premium unleaded. Don't know why, but the higher octane you can go, your kind of your E5, the happier it seems to be. So that tends to kind of smooth things out a little bit. That is actually my destination, but we're still chatting, so I'm going to go for a bit of an extended ride. Because I want to talk to you a little bit about one of my biggest gripes with Indian, and I've had this gripe for a while, and that is the price of their blimming accessories. Indian, please, cut me a bit of slack. So, as I mentioned earlier, I have taken this bike on a little bit of a tour, and to do that, I wanted to get a rack for the back, which is absolutely invaluable and a really nicely made bit of kit. Wonderful thing. But it's nearly £400. Yeah, I know. I think it's like 380 or something like that. Absolute madness. But anyway, I bought it, and now that I've got it, I'm very happy with it. It is very lovely, but absolutely bonkers money. The other thing is, I have got the carbon bike, right? They call it the Carbon, and it's kind of a little bit job half done. There's still quite a lot of plasticky stuff on here, which I noticed, and I also noticed that Indian sell all the carbon bits in the glossy catalogue. So it wouldn't be too difficult to spend probably £1,500 on the full carbon kit for this Carbon bike, which I do suspect the Indian know damn well most people are going to do, right? Why wouldn't you? You've gone halfway, you might as well finish the job. So yeah, that's a little bit frustrating. I have actually ordered all the carbon stuff, I know, but why wouldn't you? The only thing is, I've got to wait for it, because it's everything, like everything in life at the moment, it's all on blimming back order. It's all, you know, it's all held up somewhere. Whoa, that dog! I honestly thought that was going to run out in front of me. My God! But yeah, the parts catalogue from Indian is an absolute joke. I think they're probably even worse than Harley in that sense. The bike is just the start of the emptying of your wallet. Now, to facilitate space in a garage for this machine, I have sadly sold the Indian Scout. So the Scout has gone, and this has taken its place. I do miss it, actually. It's a very different bike to this. I know a lot of comparisons have been drawn to the Indian Scout and this, but having experienced both, forget it. Forget it. Stop it. No. Although the core architecture of the engine on this bike is taken from the Scout, everything is different. Everything is different. The way it spins, the way it makes power, they've done a ton of work on this engine to enable it to realise its full potential. You might remember when I was riding the Scout, doing a couple of first impressions videos and things like that, I said the engine on this package is far beyond the overall capability of the complete bike. And what I was getting at there was, like, it was clearly constrained by the chassis. It had clearly been bottled up and muzzled due to the fact that it was put into a cruiser that was slammed to the floor, very low ground clearance, you know, very kind of basic suspension, very basic brakes, all that stuff. But you could feel that there was some serious potential in that engine. And in this format, it has been allowed to truly become the beast that it always wanted to be. And they've done a bit of work to it, so they've lightened the crank. It's got a lot more of a kind of revvy character to it. Obviously they've changed the fueling. I think the engine cases are lighter as well. I think it's all magnesium now. And it's entirely different. So yeah, honestly, you can just forget all of that comparison to the Scouts. Take it from somebody who's owned both. They are almost at opposite ends of the performance spectrum. It is amazing, isn't it, how with just a few tweaks and changes you can massively change the characteristics of an engine. It's quite incredible. But yeah, these are night and day in terms of their differences. So there you go, a little brief introduction to my latest toy, the Indian FTR R Carbon. I am massively looking forward to making some more videos on the channel about this bike. And if you hit subscribe, you will be there when they drop, hopefully. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and until the next one, ride safe.